Good afternoon and welcome back. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to welcome you to working session number 5 on tolerance and non-discrimination. On behalf of the OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, I would like to extend our warm welcome to Ambassador Verveer, who joins us for the first time in her capacity of a Special Representative of the OSCE Chair in Office on Gender Issues. Ambassador Verveer is an established diplomat and gender equality champion. She was appointed to be the first ever US Ambassador at Large for Global Women's Issues at the Department of State in 2009 by President Obama. She also worked with the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton on coordinating foreign policy issues and activities relating to the political, economic, and social advancement of women. I would also like to welcome another prominent woman who is a familiar OSCE face when it comes to gender equality. So I'm happy to have Ambassador Miroslava Beham, OSCE Senior Gender Advisor, joining us for this session too. Ambassador Beham began her diplomatic career with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Serbia and Montenegro, where she held posts of Deputy Head of the Serbia and Montenegro Mission to the OSCE and other international organizations in Vienna, and was also a chargé d'affaires. Subsequently, she was appointed Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Serbia to the OSCE and other international organizations in Vienna, and stayed in the post until December 2011, when she took up her present functions. During the session this afternoon, we are looking forward to discussing equal opportunities for women and men in all spheres of life, including through the implementation of the OSCE Action Plan for the Promotion of Gender Equality. We will also discuss issues of violence against women and children. 2015 is an important year for gender equality advocates across the world and the OSCE region. As you know, we are marking the 20th anniversary of the Beijing Platform for Action as a document which meant to translate the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, known as the Bill of Women's Rights, into concrete steps and actions needed to be taken to address gender inequality in many areas. For OSCE, as the largest regional security organization, this year is also relevant, as we need to look at the implementation in the last 15 years of the UN Security Council Resolution on Women, Peace and Security, or Resolution 1325. The relevance of this document does not fade as we continue to face challenges in responding to the differential impact of conflicts on women and men, insufficient involvement of women in negotiations, peace building, or post-conflict reconstruction. During the session today, we hope to hear more about initiatives which OSCE participating states and structures have been implementing to ensure the participation of women in peace negotiations, mediation, and dialogue facilitation processes. Furthermore, this year we are marking the 11th anniversary of the 2004 OSCE Action Plan for the Promotion of Gender Equality. Having in mind conclusions from last year's Gender Equality Review Conference, it is of utmost relevance to continue discussion on the OSCE's vision of gender equality and to what degree have commitments in the areas of equal opportunities for women and men, as well as combating violence against women and children, have been implemented so far. We need to remain open to discussions about how OSCE structures, keeping in mind their mandates as set out in the 2004 Action Plan for the Promotion of Gender Equality, can assist OSCE participating states in fulfilling their commitments to achieving gender equality. Before we start with the presentations, I would encourage all participants to constructively contribute to the discussion and provide their views on the implementation of the OSCE Gender Action Plan and related commitments. I would also appreciate hearing about new challenges faced by OSCE participating states in promoting and achieving gender equality and what have been the responses to changed circumstances. Also welcome contributions about good practices in promotion of the equal and effective participation of women and men in public life, including in decision-making at all levels and in the security sector and the judiciary. I also hope to hear more about how OSCE can promote the engagement of men in different initiatives to prevent and combat gender-based violence. We would also like to reflect on the effective measures taken to prevent and combat gender-based violence and violence against children in OSCE participating states. ODIHR encourages all participants to submit soft or hard copies of statements to the Documentation Center at the venue main lobby for distribution so that the flow of documents would accurately reflect the flow of discussions during plenary sessions. We would like also to remind the participants about the possibility of submitting written recommendations that will be compiled in the HCAM consolidated summary after the meeting. Also, as you know, these and other sessions are streamlined online, and we might get questions later on coming from the gender equality advocates from across the OSCE region. And if that is the case, we'll try to get some answers at the end of the session. So now to take more of your time today, I would like now to ask our distinguished speakers for the opening remarks. So, Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Deputy Director Balbin. Thank you all for the opportunity to join you today for this working session, which also includes a focus on equal opportunity for women and men in all spheres of life, gender equality, and combating violence against women and children. I want to begin by commending Director Link for his leadership. I met with him on the first day of my assignment to the OSCE, and I was impressed by his commitment to these issues. I want to acknowledge Deputy Director Balbin and Ambassador Beham for their tireless efforts, and to thank the chairmanship for their committed leadership and for making this issue a priority. In July, I had the privilege to address the Human Dimension Committee's meeting that was focused on gender equality. And as I said then in Vienna, gender equality cuts across all three dimensions. It is essential to advancing human rights and democracy, to achieving economic prosperity, and to ending conflicts and advancing security and building sustainable peace. Gender equality and security go hand in hand. As we all know, we gather here on the 20th anniversary of the 4th UN World Conference on Women. It was there that a platform for action was adopted by 187 nations by consensus, and it continues to serve as an imperative and blueprint against which we still measure women's progress to this day. And we have made progress, but ours is an unfinished agenda. Women's economic participation is still constrained by barriers yet to be overcome. Violence against women and girls is a global scourge and undermines the security of half the world's population. Women are still discriminated against in the political arena. For too many, their experiences, their talents, and their perspectives are shut out of the decisions of democracies. The words human rights are women's rights and women's rights are human rights echoed from Beijing around the world and remind us that justice and equality are as critical today on these issues for women and girls, but also critical to enhancing progress, democracy, and peace in the OSCE region and around the globe. We are also guided in our deliberations by the OSCE's Action Plan for the Promotion of Gender Equality and the recommendations that flowed out of last year's Gender Equality Review Conference, as well as the need to strengthen our implementation across the region. There has been discussions on the addendum to the Action Plan, which hopefully will be adopted later this year to update the OSCE's framework on gender equality across all the dimensions. Today, we know that investing in progress for women is not just the right thing to do. It will always fundamentally be a human rights imperative. But it is also the smart and strategic thing to do, a proposition resting on a strong base of mounting data, research, and empirical evidence that shows when women make progress, societies make progress. In the brief time I have, I want to focus my remarks today on the need for women's voice and agency in the political process. Democracy without the participation of women is a contradiction in terms. In the region, women are engaged in elective and appointive offices, but their progress has been slow, including in my own country. The Beijing Platform for Action noted, Without the active participation of women and the incorporation of the perspective of women at all levels of decision-making, the goals for equality, development, and peace cannot be achieved. Rightly, the OSCE Action Plan specifically mandates ODIHR to assist participating states in developing effective measures to bring about the equal participation of women in democratic processes and to assist in developing best practices for their implementation. This is a critical mission. Although women have made gains, their gains are uneven throughout the region, and the progress is not what it should be. All too often, important decisions that affect them, their families, their societies, continue to be made without their having a voice in the decisions. In addition to the Beijing call for action, the UN Security Council 15 years ago, next month, adopted Security Council Resolution 1325, which recognized the necessary role women must play in peace negotiations, in conflict prevention, in countering violent extremism, and rebuilding societies post-conflict. As the OSCE has recognized, women's perspectives are crucial for a full understanding of the impact of a conflict, and taking into account women's conflict experience is essential to establishing lasting peace. These issues play out across the region, but in Ukraine there is a real-time sense of urgency. I was recently there for a country visit on the very day that a 30% gender quota law for local elections was passed by the Rada. In a meeting with women parliamentarians and others, they made a plea for ODIHR's support for the kinds of assistance that will ensure that the political parties put the quotas into practice and that women candidates receive the training they need to effectively compete. And I understand that ODIHR has been critically engaged. Enhancing women's participation in politics and elections is a core mission for ODIHR, and I commend you for your efforts to compile and share good practices to advance women's roles in parties, as well as for the draft compendium, which will be a significant contribution. There are many hurdles that continue to prevent women's participation in the political arena, from electoral systems and party laws, to the lack of capacity building programs for emerging leaders, to harmful stereotypes and mindsets that suggest women do not belong. This is an urgent matter for participating states and for ODIHR to foster equal participation. Yet it is a matter of gender equality. Yes, it is, but it is also about the strength of democracy and the effectiveness of governance. The principles of Security Council Resolution 1325, conflict prevention, protection from violence, and women's participation in addressing critical decisions, ranging from reconciliation to building the rule of law to access to economic opportunity, these are all necessary for people to move forward with their lives and for peace agreements to hold. Let me use Ukraine again as an example. Progress in ending the conflict there, addressing the needs of 1.4 million internally displaced people, the majority of whom are women and children, as well as the strains that come from the reintegration of soldiers, all require a consideration of the perspectives of women and their active participation in decision-making. So too does addressing the exacerbation of violence against women. It is imperative for Ukraine and for all of us to help the documentation of violence and to appropriately respond to the critical needs of the victims of abuse and bring their perpetrators to justice. Many of the participating states in the region have adopted national action plans on women, peace, and security. These plans need to be robustly implemented so they represent more than checking the box and actually address the range of participating states' obligations within their own governments and in supporting other states who would benefit from their assistance. I concur with the Gender Equality Review Conference recommendation that participating states should adopt an OSCE-wide action plan on women, peace, and security, as other regional bodies have done. As the world's largest national security organization, the OSCE should lead by example. This is both a strategic security necessity and an issue of fundamental human rights. Violence against women continues to plague the region and the world. Its scope and scale make it one of the biggest and most entrenched human rights issues. Domestic violence is pervasive, and violence is increasingly manifesting itself against women in the political sphere. The consequences of this violence undermine human rights and threaten security. It also extracts huge costs in society and governments amounting to billions of dollars. It tears family and societal cohesion. It undermines productivity. It escalates costs in healthcare and challenges democratic responsiveness. We can no longer confine this issue to the margins of states' concerns as a women's issue, somehow not rising in importance to the level of other matters. This is serious, even deadly serious. Laws that have been adopted need to be fully implemented. Law enforcement and judges need to be trained, more women recruited into police forces, and efforts need to be made to prevent these violent acts. It is too late when they turn into capital crimes. Survivors need to be protected and sheltered from further abuse, and justice needs to be rendered so these crimes, and they are crimes, are prosecuted. The security sector has a major responsibility, and participating states must ensure that the security needs of women are being addressed. Women should not be afraid to report these crimes, as too many are. We also have to seek more creative ways to ensure that men and boys are part of the solution. The Men Engaged network established by the participating states of the OSCE is an encouraging step. We need to learn what is working from each other and exercise the political will to take the necessary steps to staunch this epidemic, much as we would any disease that threatens the well-being of our citizens. It is not enough to ratify the Istanbul Convention. That is a very important step, to be sure, but its full implementation is urgently required. A commitment to the security of all citizens and the protection of human rights demands nothing less. So as we mark these important international observances and remind ourselves of the commitments we have made, and as the OSCE continues to grapple with these challenges, we must not only reaffirm the commitments we have made, but engage in more creative ways and with greater urgency to overcome the persistent obstacles to advancing women and progress for the region. Women's rights are human rights. Women have the right to participate fully in the political affairs of their societies and to be free from violence. Democracy cannot flourish without the engagement of half the population in all aspects of governance. When the doors of progress are closed to women, we close the doors to social, political, and economic progress for all of our people, women and men, girls and boys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Bevier, for joining us here today and for sharing with us very inspiring thoughts that I'm sure will prompt interesting discussions later on when we open the list of speakers. And I would like now to turn to our second introducer today, our colleague and Senior Gender Advisor in the OSCE, Ambassador Beham.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. It's of course a great honor and pleasure for me to speak here today at this session, and I would like also to thank Ambassador Bevier for her, as always, very powerful presentation and speech. The year 2015 is a particularly important year for women's rights all over the world. As we already heard, we mark significant anniversaries, such as the 20 years of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, and 15 years since the adoption of Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. We are also expecting the new post-2015 development agenda to be endorsed in the next 5 days, with the standalone goal number 5 on achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls. All three documents give us in the OSCE an important guidance and framework for our policies and activities, and even more. They explicitly call on regional organizations to assist the United Nations in the implementation of the commitments contained in these documents. The OSCE, as the largest regional security organization in the world, and with its cross-dimensional and comprehensive security approach, can and should play a substantial role with respect to translating these commitments into action and make them become a reality. If we look back, we have been witnessing significant changes and improvements in gender equality over the past 15 or 20 years. The World Economic Forum Global Gender Gap Report in 2014, for example, confirms this and says that more and more women have been educated and engaged in political and economic life. Yet, despite improvements in these areas, the average number of women's participation in parliaments in the OSCE region, as an example, is still below 30%. For 9 years now in a row, the Global Gender Gap Report of the World Economic Forum measures the progress of countries at a global level in the economic field, in political life, education, and health. These gender gap reports are useful not only as they enable a comparison among countries on a global scale, but they also allow the identification of gaps and obstacles when it comes to the implementation of women's rights and combating gender equality. For the enhancement of gender equality, it is extremely helpful that more and more quantitative and qualitative data are available. There is a positive trend in this direction. For example, the Gender Equality Institute of the European Union recently started to measure progress of EU member states by creating the Gender Equality Index in the domains of power, time, money, work, knowledge, and health. There are 2 additional domains introduced by EIGE, but they are particularly challenging to measure. One is intersectionality, and the other is violence against women. We know that violence against women affects women's well-being all over the world. We know better now what the situation in the European Union is in this regard. We know better because the European Union Fundamental Rights Agency report released a unique survey in 2014 which says that 33% of women in the European Union have experienced physical and/or sexual violence since the age of 15. The survey produced a wealth of data that uncovered the hidden reality of women in EU countries and launched discussions as well as policy development on a national level and within the European Union institutions. It is of highest importance to measure progress on gender equality, even if it is sometimes difficult. Only by measuring progress we can track global, regional, and national trends in gender equality and follow how many resources are allocated, to what extent we are really applying gender mainstreaming. This helps us making informed decisions and improving our policy making by using indicators, gender markers, and other tools for measurement. Measuring progress on gender equality is crucial also for the OSCE comprehensive approach to security. In fact, gender equality as a concept of ensuring the dignity and security of women and men is one of the cornerstones of our comprehensive security approach. This unique concept defines women's rights and gender equality as an inalienable part of all efforts to achieve secure and democratic societies. In order to be better able to identify gaps and challenges, the gender section of the OSCE Secretariat, in cooperation with OSCE executive structures and participating states, has made several innovative steps in the context of monitoring progress and measuring results. One of the steps was organizing the Gender Equality Review Conference under the Swiss chairmanship, which tried to comprehensively summarize the 10-year implementation of the OSCE Gender Action Plan adopted in 2004. The chairmanship conclusions of this conference gave important guidelines to OSCE executive structures and participating states about how to further promote gender equality. Another step that we have taken in order to enhance the process of tracking progress was to strengthen the capacities of the OSCE internal structures to apply gender mainstreaming. We drafted, with the help of an internal task force, a gender equality implementation roadmap for the Secretariat that outlines outcomes and outputs, indicators, means of verification, and responsibilities for each Secretariat, department, and unit specifically. We also assist field operations in creating their own implementation plans for gender mainstreaming. This is an important development that will enable OSCE structures to track the progress in gender mainstreaming in our own programs, activities, and projects. In this context, we also started introducing innovative tools that will allow the OSCE executive structures to have a better understanding of how gender equality is measured and achieved in the work of the organization. The first of these tools is the gender marker that helps us score projects and identify the level of gender equality and gender mainstreaming they reach. This year, we also continue efforts to strengthen the OSCE gender architecture by assisting the Serbian chairmanship as well as participating states to develop an addendum to the 2004 OSCE Action Plan for the promotion of gender equality. The addendum should complement the action plan and is supposed to provide an updated framework on gender equality in the OSCE. It should address efforts to advance gender equality and gender mainstreaming in all three dimensions and across participating states as well as OSCE structures. I sincerely hope that the addendum will be adopted later this year. It would significantly help to reinforce the implementation of our commitments. One of the issues addressed in the chairmanship conclusions of the Gender Equality Review Conference is the lack of data in the OSCE in many areas of gender equality. Let me take the field of violence against women. There is no need to remind us all that violence against women and children is the most widespread crime and human rights violation in the world. It is both a consequence and a cause of inequality between women and men in society and in the family. I want to underline that violence against women and children is perpetuated also by a culture of silence and denial. The fact that only 38% of OSCE participating states have signed the important Istanbul Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence requires increased efforts to enhance the number of countries that commit to this important document. Despite respectable international, regional, and national efforts to foster combating violence against women and stimulate the development of legal and strategic frameworks, increasing migration flows, economic downturns, conflicts, and post-conflict recovery, as well as worsening public attitudes have resulted in a growing prevalence of violence against women. Last year, the OSCE adopted its second Ministerial Council decision on preventing and combating violence against women that urges participating states and OSCE executive structures for concrete actions to be taken in strengthening legal and strategic frameworks, prevention of violence, data collection, protection of victims, and fighting the impunity of perpetrators. As a follow-up to this decision, the OSCE will start now applying the excellent methodology used by the Fundamental Rights Agency in EU countries to other OSCE participating states, and in this way get data that will allow for comparative analysis and increase the knowledge of national and international policymakers in the area of combating violence against women. This data collection will also inform OSCE policies and enable more targeted projects and activities. Collecting data and measuring progress are indispensable tools if we want to be more focused and effective in promoting gender equality and women's empowerment. We have made some progress, but we need more of it. We need a more systematic approach in the OSCE, but also in participating states. I encourage delegations to endorse, in the framework of the addendum, the establishment of a gender equality network of national representatives that would allow for more sharing of experiences and good practices and other forms of closer cooperation among participating states. I would also like to encourage the idea of having another gender equality review conference next year, as the first one was a success and welcomed by experts and policymakers from participating states. And finally, I would also like to encourage civil society to again become more active in the field of gender equality. It was civil society who pushed for crucial developments in this area years ago, and we need this kind of power again. We have become sometimes too lenient towards discrimination and the violation of women's rights, and as Melan Verveer already said, but women's rights are human rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Breham, and thank you very much for all the work that you and your unit are doing and helping all of us in OSCE to continue gender mainstreaming. With this, we have arrived at the time where we open the speakers list. For the time being, I have 30 speakers that have requested to take the floor. So we are limiting the time to 3.5 minutes per intervention. So if there's anybody else who would like to take the floor, please let our colleagues sitting in the back know, and we will include it in the list of speakers. Let me remind you that we would rather have your recommendations first and anything else after, and that you can always submit your written statements through the document distribution system. So please try to concentrate on the recommendations, and criticism is welcome as far as it remains constructive. So with this, I would like to invite the first speaker on the list to take the floor, which is Finland, on behalf of the European Union, and it will be followed by Canada. Finland.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I am honored to speak on behalf of the European Union. The following countries align themselves with this statement: Turkey, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, Montenegro, Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Liechtenstein, Norway, Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Andorra and San Marino. Madam Moderator, please note that this list of aligned states is not final, and full list of aligned states will be provided on the written and full version of this statement. Madam Moderator, I wish to thank all the speakers, or the two speakers, and wish to present the following recommendations to the OSCE and the participating states. First, adopt an addendum to the OSCE 2004 Action Plan for the promotion of gender equality. Secondly, enhance efforts to eliminate violence against women throughout the OSCE area. Thirdly, adopt an OSCE-wide action plan on women, peace and security. And fourthly, encourage participating states to increase representation of women in political and public life. Madam Moderator, promotion of gender equality and empowerment of women is an important priority among the EU's OSCE priorities. The EU stresses the importance of addressing the gender equality and empowerment of women as a cross-dimensional topic. OSCE Ministerial Council Decision 8/14, taken in Basel last year, tasks the OSCE participating state to elaborate an addendum to the OSCE 2004 Action Plan on Promotion of Gender Equality and to bring it to the Permanent Council for adoption in 2015. The EU aims at achieving an explicit and strong addendum based on women's rights, which enhances the existing OSCE commitments. Implementation of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 and related resolutions remain highly relevant. We therefore support the adoption of the OSCE-wide action plan on women, peace and security. Women's active participation and leadership is crucial in all parts of peace and security decision-making and action in order to reach sustainable peace. The OSCE, as the world's largest regional organization, has formulated its own commitments to implement UN Security Council Resolution 1325 and its 6 follow-up resolutions. The topic enjoys wide support among the OSCE participating states. There are 51 national action plans globally and 27 of them within the OSCE region. The Regional Conference and Consultation on UN Security Council Resolution 1325 organized in Vilnius this year, provided an arena for sharing best practices in the OSCE area. We are also delighted that the Secretary General of the OSCE will organize a Security Day on Women, Peace and Security in November in Vienna. Madam Moderator, women and especially girls are particularly exposed to sexual exploitation and violence in conflict. It is urgent that we ensure accountability and stop impunity for violence against women and sexual violence in conflict and in peacetime. Progress on gender equality and prevention of sexual violence are critical factors in achieving peace, security, and sustainable development of societies. Violence against women and girls is one of the most pervasive human rights violations and a significant cause of personal insecurity in the OSCE regions. One of the areas where the OSCE has been innovative in combating violence against women is the establishment of an OSCE Men Engaged network. We would like to see concrete improvements in the area of promoting gender equality. Establishing a biennial OSCE Gender Equality Conference supported by adequate resources is one practical suggestion to promote gender equality within the OSCE. Madam Moderator, much remains to be done to ensure the equal participation of women in democratic processes. Particular attention needs to be paid to vulnerable groups such as Roma and Sinti women and girls belonging to indigenous peoples, women and girls with disabilities, and LGBTI persons who often face multiple forms of discrimination. We commend the work of ODIHR and other relevant OSCE structures in advancing the political participation of women and encourage further efforts in this regard. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite now Canada to take the floor, followed by the Union of Women of Russia. Canada.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Canada's statement will be delivered in French, and its full version will be distributed. 20 ans après.
Following the adoption of the Beijing Platform for Action, there is still a lot of work to be done in the areas of gender equality and the prevention of violence against women. Ensuring the emancipation of women and their full integration in society remains a priority. We are therefore committed to promoting in Canada and around the world the full participation of women and girls in all decision-making processes, particularly those belonging to vulnerable groups. We are, among other measures, taking concrete steps to support women's entrepreneurial activities, whether they're looking to create innovative small businesses, to take their place on a board of directors, or to create economic opportunities for immigrant women, or to participate in international trade missions. Canada will also continue to prioritize the elimination of violence against women. This focus includes domestic and sexual violence, notably in conflict situations. And Canada will continue to work toward ending child, early, and forced marriages. On this 15th anniversary of the adoption of Security Council Resolution 1325, we are also continuing our efforts to promote the role that women play in peace and international security, as well as conflict resolution and international mediation. We welcome the growing attention of the OSCE to this important theme. Madam Moderator, we are happy to note the appointment of Ambassador Verveer as Special Representative of the OSCE Chairmanship in Office on Gender Issues and express our support. And we also extend our full support to Ambassador Miroslava Beham for her efforts to turn the OSCE into a model that fully incorporates women's vast range of experiences, talent, and skills, which they can share to ensure security in our region. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. I would like to invite now the Union of Women of Russia, that will be followed by...
Dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it's my honor and indeed a great responsibility for me to greet you on behalf of the largest and most authoritative civil society organization in the post-Soviet space, the Union of Women of Russia. It is the successor to the Anti-Fascist Committee of Soviet Women established in 1941. The Union of Women of Russia, despite the vicissitudes of the history of our country, has never betrayed the values enshrined. These values are peace and children, and these are the values that I wish to proclaim to ensure that our organization deals with issues concerning the preservation of peace. In this new time, our union acts in accordance with its objective of peace and equality, guaranteed rights and equal opportunities for men and women. Therefore, I wish to point out that it's at the initiative of this Union of Women, with the participation of women MPs in the Duma, the Russian Constitution now has Article 19, under which women and men have equal rights and freedoms. Over the past quarter of a century, and the Union of Women of Russia and its regional organizations have taken part as partners of the state in the policy of removing discrimination against women. One of the most important goals is, and the satisfaction that we have, is the increase in life expectancy, a higher birth rate, lower mortality. These demographic indicators bear testimony to the improvement in the quality of life of women. The strength of our organization is in the unity of its component women's councils. I have been in charge of one of these councils for the past 30 years in the Altai region. The Altai region, there are 1.4 million of us, and 1 in 4 women has higher education. Amongst the leaders of the state and municipal bodies, they represent 80%. Women in business are already crowding out the men. The growth of women businesses is 45% higher, and women's business is up 1.7 on male business. We have many more things to do to fulfill the potential of women. One very wise person said, "We men rule the world and women rule us." Our women's organization does not rule men, but it is building with them partnership in the interests of families and children. Nothing is more important than this. We have a unique institute for social partnership with local, national authorities, and in our region we have another institute, which is for the Institute for Responsible Fatherhood, where the Council of Fathers, we have a local Council of Fathers, in order to prevent the social ill health of women and to ensure the rights of women and children. One of the joint actions is the Altai region without orphans, and for some years now we have an information campaign to prevent violence against women and children. We have for the past 15 years, we have crisis centers on this, and I would like to conclude with what I started off with. Dear friends, with the new challenges facing our planet, the threat to peace, we have to be united in the most important thing, which is preventing war. And for we Russian women who survived the horrors of the Second World War, the Great Patriotic War, peace and children are the most important values. If there is no peace, then everything else is in vain. And this concerns all of us, wherever we live, in Belarus, Russia, Poland, Lithuania, Afghanistan. We all live on the same planet. Therefore, I call on you all, and all countries in the OSCE and our international women's community, not to betray these key values, and I wish everybody fulfillment of their wishes, peace and happiness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite now the representative of the United States of America, that will be followed by the representative of Germany.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Women and girls who are empowered, educated, and given equal opportunity contribute to their families, their societies, and to the possibility for countries to be more prosperous, stable, and secure. Access for girls to quality education is critical to ensure that women have the opportunity to succeed economically and to participate equally in political life. Workplaces must be free of discrimination and sexual harassment. Several OSCE participating states lack specific laws addressing sexual harassment, particularly in the workplace. Even in countries where such legislation exists, it is not always properly enforced. We support OSCE institutions and field presences that are working to assist participating states in implementing their commitments to ensure equality of opportunity between women and men. We particularly note the important work being done by the Women's Resource Centers, supported by the OSCE office in Tajikistan, and the staff course for women leaders at the OSCE Border Management Staff College. We also recall the 2013 Kiev ministerial decision on Roma and Sinti women and children, where OSCE participating states agreed to focus their efforts to promote opportunities for Romani women and girls to access education, employment, healthcare, and political participation. We commend the Czech Republic for taking steps toward compensating Romani women who were forcibly sterilized and encourage other participating states to investigate and seek to rectify any similar incidents. The United States remains concerned about gender-based violence throughout the OSCE region and around the globe. In the North Caucasus, too many women continue to face honor killings, bride kidnapping, and early enforced marriage, as evidenced by the May wedding between a 17-year-old girl to the Chechen police chief. Although some OSCE participating states prosecute domestic violence under general assault laws, laws specifically against domestic violence strengthen authorities' ability to hold abusers accountable and can be drafted to relieve the victim of the burden of pressing charges. OSCE participating states that do not have specific laws against domestic violence, but we hope will, include Armenia and Uzbekistan. Laws alone are not enough. We welcome suggestions from the Special Representative of the Chairperson in office on gender issues, on ways that the OSCE might support specific training and victim assistance efforts. We welcome 2 landmark rulings in June by Bosnian courts that convicted some perpetrators and ordered them to pay compensation to the victims of rape from the war 20 years ago, establishing a precedent for courts to decide on financial compensation for victims during criminal proceedings. We urge Bosnian authorities at all levels to ensure that all cases move forward as expeditiously as possible. We welcome the adoption in May of legislation in Croatia recognizing rape as a war crime and providing assistance and compensation to war rape survivors through free counseling, legal and medical aid, and a monthly financial stipend. It remains vital that the Kyrgyz authorities bring perpetrators to justice and provide assistance to victims of rape from the interethnic violence in Osh and Jalalabad 5 years ago. NGOs and the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine have also received reports of sexual violence and rape, including by men in military uniforms. We urge the OSCE to investigate these reports as well as to support NGO efforts to do so with a view to assisting victims and holding perpetrators accountable. The use of rape as a weapon of war must stop. The United States is an active partner in the United Kingdom's Preventing Sexual Violence and Conflict Initiative. Even those in the highest echelons of military or government who ordered, engaged in, or exercised command responsibility over subordinates who committed serious human rights violations, including acts of sexual violence, are not welcome in the United States. We urge all states to step up efforts to ensure accountability for all perpetrators. In conclusion, the United States encourages the participating states to cooperate with the Office of Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, the OSCE Senior Advisor on Gender Issues, and the Chairmanship's Special Representative on Gender Issues, Ambassador Milan Verveer. We support an addendum to the 2004 Action Plan for the Promotion of Gender Equality and look forward to its adoption at the OSCE Ministerial in Belgrade. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I invite now the representative of Germany to take the floor, and that will be followed by the representative of the United Kingdom.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I represent a German delegation today. My name is Katharina Penev. I come from the Federal Ministry for Family Affairs, Senior Citizens, Women and Youth, and I will deliver my statement in German. Ergänzend zum Statement der EU möchte ich
In order to further develop the statement made by the European Union, I would first of all like to thank Ambassador Verveer for her statement on the challenges faced by all participating states. I wish to thank her. Before moving on to the implementation of the action plan in Germany, I would like to make the following important point. Why do we always have to talk about gender equality in our society? Why do the politicians in this, why gender equality and the inviolability of individuals is fundamental for human rights? Whatever the gender of the person, this is the very base of our common values at the OSCE, and the trends that we see have to be strengthened. And also we see that gender equality brings about better economic development in the countries. There is a positive impact in ensuring the recovery of societies where women take an active part at all levels of society, in business, in administration, in government, at political level. These societies are more stable. Women participation represents significant economic potential, and some EU member states could achieve an extra 1% GDP growth if indeed there were proper gender equality in the workplace. We cannot not fail to deal with these challenges, and because this would mean giving up the potential represented by women in our societies. Very briefly, I would dwell on two examples regarding implementation in Germany. Our challenges in Germany, as in other countries, are equal pay for men and women, as well as combating violence against children and women, and of course equal opportunities for women in the economy. All this has to be promoted constantly. In Germany, we have an example in recent years whereby we have improved women's involvement in the civil service, more women MPs in the Bundestag, more corporate officers in major companies. The current percentage is only 22% of women on boards, company boards. The government has decided to adopt a law which has since come into effect since 2016. In the 110 largest listed companies, there has to be a 30% women quota. These are examples of what we're doing to try to improve women's involvement. Another major challenge is the struggle against violence against children and women. Given all the measures, the action plans that have been implemented, Germany has offered its help in this area. We have 350 special homes for women to provide help for women. There's a special hotline for women which provides assistance in 15 different languages. And what is very important is that victims of violence, women can come to the police, seek medical help. And as now for the OSCE, first of all, I wish to commend the OSCE for its approach to gender equality. Germany and the European Union could take an example from this systematic implementation. We are in favor of the strengthening gender equality at the OSCE, and this shows that the mechanisms must be at the very top of our priorities in order to be effective. Therefore, for us in Germany, we also have a special ministry for gender equality. The Gender Equality Unit in the OSCE could help us by exchanging best practices between the member states, participating states, especially when the states are active in areas such as peace, security, and women's rights. Thank you very much.
I would like to invite now the representative of the United Kingdom, that will be followed by the representative from the Russian Federation, the UK.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the UK, I would first like to support fully the statement made by my Finnish colleague on behalf of the European Union, and would like to add some national remarks. Madam Moderator, this working session has addressed many important issues. Let me address just a couple briefly. Firstly, gender equality. No OSCE country has yet achieved full gender equality. Some of us at breakfast this morning were reminded that this story goes back many generations. In the UK, we have made massive gains as compared, for example, with my mother's generation. But like all of us here, we still have much more to do to ensure equality of opportunity fully, for example, in the workplace, and to achieve equal representation of women in public life. Madam Moderator, I would like to highlight some of the measures that the British government is taking to address some of these many challenges. In July, my Prime Minister announced steps to tackle the gender pay gap. These include plans requiring every company with more than 250 employees to publish the difference between the average pay of male and female employees. Separately, the government is working to support women to start and develop their own businesses through loans as well as networking and mentoring opportunities. To turn to the other important topic here of gender-based violence, as highlighted at last week's seminar on online abuse of female journalists, organised by the representative of the freedom of the media, this problem too has roots in wider societal attitudes to women. In June, the British government launched a website called Stop Online Abuse to help people take action against offensive, damaging or threatening contents in all forms of media, particularly online. The website provides practical advice for women and, incidentally, for LGBTI adults on how to recognise abuse, report it, and get offensive content removed. We are acting too to reduce the incidence of gender-based violence. In the incidence of gender-based violence. In the interests of time, I'll just highlight one recent example. The British government has responded to concerns about violence against women and girls on university campuses, so our universities will be required to take steps to provide a safer environment for all students. Further details of the range of UK activity are now published in a quarterly online newsletter called Violence Against Women and Girls on the UK government portal, for anyone who's more interested. Madam Moderator, the UK is playing an active role in the run-up to the UN High-Level Review of Women, Peace and Security, which will be held on the 13th of October, marking the 15th anniversary of the adoption of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325. This review is an important, unique opportunity for change, and I call on all OSCE partners to join the UK in planning ambitious commitments. Finally, Madam Moderator, I wish to highlight the UK's continuing commitment to the Preventing Sexual Violence in Conflict Initiative, PSVI, to implementation of the International Protocol on the documentation of sexual violence in conflict, and our call to action on protecting women and girls in humanitarian emergencies. We want to see these priorities embedded in the work of multilateral institutions. I therefore call on future OSCE chairmanships to use the OSCE's multidimensional approach and conflict prevention mandate to make a real difference and help bring about the cultural change that will save lives. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. I invite now the representative of the Russian Federation to take the floor. It will be followed by the representative of Andorra.
Благодарю. Уважаемая госпожа.
Thank you, distinguished Madam Moderator, distinguished colleagues. The Russian Federation places its priority on attention to protecting the rights of women and children. We think we must ensure true gender equality in all areas of society. This must not be formal equality expressed in percentages and quotas, but true equality. Men and women must have the opportunity to work as they wish in keeping with their personal talents and professionalism. Despite the fact that in Russia, traditionally, the education system developed relying on gender-based choices of study, women in Russia are in part choosing to exercise the so-called men's professions and have the opportunity to do so. One clear example of this is provided by the fact that currently 60% of students in biochemical physics departments are women. One extremely important task for any state is to ensure that women enjoy an opportune combination between their family and professional lives. This promotes both social and demographic development. Any discriminatory limitations must be eliminated from labor and employment practices. In the Russian Federation, it's not possible for an employer to fire not only a pregnant woman, but also the father of the child, who is the main breadwinner in the family, and paid maternity leave until the child is 3 years of age is provided not only to the mother, but also to the father and any person who's taking care of the child. What is more, child care benefits are provided not only to those who are employed, but also to the unemployed. We are concerned by the fact that many countries underestimate the importance of the ensurance of economic and social rights of women. The situation of women has notably worsened due to the economic crisis. In such conditions, motherhood and childhood should be protected as a priority. Unfortunately, we note that in the work of the OSCE, despite the direct commitments in the Vienna document of 1999, there remains an imbalance regarding issues of women's participation in political and social life. We note that social and economic issues unjustly receive less attention. We expect that in the addendum to the Plan of Action on Gender Equality, which is to be adopted at the ministerial meeting in Belgrade, all of these clusters of issues must receive equal attention. And we support the work of Ambassador Behram and are glad to note her visit to the Russian Federation in July of this year, and we are open to further cooperation with the Office of the Senior Advisor. Of course, a serious problem today remains violence against women, not only sexual violence, but also domestic violence. And international commitments in fighting violence against women have been formulated in detail. We must now move from words to action. We think it both inopportune and counterproductive, however, to transfer to the OSCE the mechanisms and documents of other organizations. We refer specifically to the excessive attention paid by the OSCE to the implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1325. Madam Chairperson, given the importance of the issues related to protecting children's rights and given the serious gaps in the activities of the OSCE in this area, we should like to recall the commitments that participating states have made through the Copenhagen document to recognize the primacy of protecting the rights of children. We specifically refer to the problems faced by orphans and by children who have been adopted and mistreated. A number of these problems, again, are experienced by orphans and by children of migrants and refugees. I refer also to the problem of the crime of pedophilia, which involves children as victims. In this connection, I should like to note that in many countries, there has not been a system of assistance to orphans and adopted children established. In certain countries, there are systemic issues related to the flawed work of social services. We continue to express our serious concern at this situation, and despite the fact that we have made many appeals for information, we have yet to receive information on the 26 cases of Russian children who were illegally placed in new adoptive and foster families through so-called internet exchanges of children in the U.S. In a number of cases, we know that the children were adopted by pedophiles who used them to produce pornography. According to the data of the Reuters agency, 261 children were exchanged or sold in this area. I will conclude here, and I'd like to remind you of the event this evening at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I invite now the representative of Andorra to take the floor, and it will be followed by the Association for the Prevention of Torture.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I will deliver this statement in Spanish. Mi delegación se ha adherido a la declaración hecha por
My delegation associates itself with the European Union statement. However, we should like to make a comment at the national level of some cross-cutting issues that reflect the very strong commitment of the government of Andorra to promote gender equality. The Plan of Action for Gender Equality was adopted in Andorra in 2010 and is focused on the following: promoting the social participation of women and their leadership, fighting against violence, ensuring a balance between work and family, and paying necessary attention to vulnerable groups such as single mothers, as well as introducing the gender perspective in other departments of the Andorra government. I should like to refer specifically to the actions that have been taken to encourage the participation of women in public life in Andorra, as well as actions we have taken to fight against gender violence. The Andorra Parliament in January of this year adopted a white paper on equality, the goal of which is to provide information on the actual situation of gender equality in Andorra, and based on this information to design a strategy in order to promote the Parliament and other public institutions in Andorra's assurance of gender equality. And so we have decided to create a new policy area in the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare, as well as in the Ministry of Labor. Now, I'm going to provide you with a statistic. In Andorra, we have 50% of women and 50% of men represented in Parliament. This is a remarkable fact, and it results from the fact that, considering we do not have the so-called pink quotas in our country, I'd like to now refer to the programs that we have instituted in order to fight violence against women. Respect for others, tolerance, and equal treatment, these must be taught from the very first years of our lives. These are the best ways in which we can fight against intolerance as well as guarantee equal opportunities. Now, human rights education has been one of Andorra's priorities in its taking on of the office of the presidency of the Council of Europe between May of 2012 and November of 2013. Now, since its adoption in 1997 of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, Andorra has adopted its legislation in order to fight against gender discrimination. And in keeping with our international commitments, we have ratified the Convention of the Council of Europe to prevent and combat gender-based violence of the 22nd of April 2014. And on the 15th of January of this year, the Parliament adopted a law which eradicates gender-based violence and domestic violence. That is, the goal of the law is to do so. Now, with respect to the creation of the government in 2006 of a special squad to assist women who are victims of violence, we should like to note the very serious nature of this problem and the great attention that we devote to it. With respect to development cooperation, I'd like to mention that there are two groups which receive a priority of our support. These are women and children in the most vulnerable cases. Let me also inform you that we will continue to support OSCE projects and to do our best to ensure the integration of the gender perspective in the OSCE documents. Thank you.
By the representative of Ukraine.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The Association for the Prevention of Torture would like to take the opportunity of this session on tolerance and non-discrimination to bring to your attention the issues specific individuals or groups face when deprived of their liberty because of their age, gender, ethnicity, religion, or physical and mental health, among others. One rarely thinks about such situations when discussing discrimination issues, yet it is crucial for the protection of those who generally face specific patterns of marginalization outside of detention that the higher risks of torture and ill treatment they face in detention are known and effectively addressed. All 57 OSCE participating states have ratified the UN Convention Against Torture and committed hence to combat and prevent torture and other ill treatment, and another 41 have ratified the optional protocol to this convention and committed to opening up their places of detention to external oversight. However, providing the right level of protection to some of those who are the most vulnerable in detention still remains a key challenge in the OSCE region. The APT recalls that a set of preventive measures can be taken to address the issue by addressing the specific needs of some categories of detainees. Special protection measures, such as specific standards, specific safeguards, should apply in cases of heightened risks of discrimination, ill treatment, or torture in detention. Children are one such example. The UN Special Rapporteur on Torture has, for instance, called for the prohibition of solitary confinement for them. Women, who represent 2 to 9% of prisoners worldwide, should also benefit from specific protection measures as enshrined in the Bangkok rules. There are many more examples one could raise. When in detention, foreigners should, for instance, enjoy equal access to information in a language they understand. Persons with disabilities should enjoy equal access to work in prison. More generally, discrimination in detention should be prohibited, as enshrined in the revised standard minimum rules known as Mandela Rules, which should be adopted soon by the UN General Assembly. These rules also require prison administrations to take into account the individual needs of prisoners, in particular the most vulnerable categories, in prison settings, and to protect and promote their rights. The APT calls on OSCE participating states to consistently apply these standards and to ensure that the dignity and the rights of all individuals and groups are effectively protected in situations of deprivation of liberty. It is furthermore crucial to foster further discussions and enable exchange of best practices on this important issue, including between national preventive mechanisms, whose role in protecting detainees in situations of vulnerability can be instrumental. The APT will contribute to this process by holding a dedicated side event tomorrow at 6 p.m., bringing together detention monitoring practitioners and anti-discrimination experts from the OSCE region. But the OSCE's role could be key in this process, also as regards its enhanced focus on torture prevention, which includes the creation of a new dedicated position within ODIHR. We call on the OSCE to advance the protection of individuals and groups in situations of vulnerability in detention by building further links between its torture prevention and its anti-discrimination work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I invite now the representative of Ukraine to take the floor, and it will be followed by the International Women's Rights Center La Strada, Ukraine.
Спасибо. Thank you. The delegation of Ukraine endorses the European Union, and we also wish to dwell on our national experience in combating violence against women and children. We have a declaration from the United Nations. Human rights have been strengthened, enshrined in the Ukrainian constitution. I'd like to draw attention to the observance of human rights, children's and women's rights by the Ukrainian security forces. Their work includes improving the level of compliance for women and children's rights in Ukrainian. We have, with the financial support of the OSCE, an interactive class. What do these classes provide? These provide screens with monitoring. With this audio equipment, we can establish whether there are any violations, and these rooms, these platforms provide training for our police and security forces, and this enables us to provide training. These courses involve different courses on human rights respect, the work representing the rights of victims and families, and providing help, assistance, and recommendations for the use of the social services, and the liability of those who are responsible for this. We had a joint work with the OSCE in 2010 with manuals on this. 15,000 manuals were put out, and in 2013 we have a special course on countering domestic violence and special training for our police forces with the Ministry of the Interior. All this is for compliance with all the rights whereby persons regarding violence against children. Child's rights are a national priority in Ukraine and one of the key thrusts of the authorities, and this includes the Ministry of the Interior. A whole series of measures have been rolled out to prevent violence against children, and this is based on examples drawn from overseas. We have a National Institute for Children's Rights, Preventing Gender Violence, and we work closely with the La Strada organization in Ukraine. And this has involved work in the Ukrainian parliament, and we have a debate on the family policy of the Ukraine. Further to Russian aggression in Ukraine, in particular in Donetsk, many families have left their homes and have had to move to other regions. We have crisis centers for these families with psychologists working with the children, and we have a special focus on the problems of youth. And I wish to state that regarding the following problem. Crimea has been annexed by the Russian Federation, and there are facts of failure of illegal adoption of children on Crimea, which has been illegally annexed.
International Women Rights Center, La Strada, to take the floor, and it will be followed by the representative of Turkey.
Thank you, Madam Chair, distinguished guests, distinguished participants. I have to stress that it is a big mistake to think that women's rights and gender equality issues are not important in the wide political and social agenda during war and conflict. Vice versa. From Ukrainian perspective, after Russian annexation of Crimea and occupation of the part of territory by paramilitary groups with support and participation of Russian Federation, we know that this viewpoint is wrong. In time of the conflict, women's full participation is crucial for peace building and conflict resolution. We also see that women and children suffer unproportionately from military actions and its consequences. Ukraine and other countries of OSCE region with open and hidden conflicts and gray zones need a recognized mechanism by which women are automatically included in all decision-making and peace-building processes. One of such mechanisms is UN Security Council Resolution 1325. I would like to thank OSCE Project Coordinator Office in Ukraine for deep and professional involvement into cooperation with governmental, international, and non-governmental organizations during developing the National Action Plan on 1325 implementation. At the moment, the draft of this plan has been finalized and sent to Ukrainian government. On behalf of civil society organizations, I would like as well to support idea of developing OSCE Regional Action Plan on implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1325. OSCE has strong monitoring capacity. We consider crucial the role of OSCE Special Monitoring Mission in Ukraine. What is important to include more gender-related issues in its monitoring reports about situation on occupied territories of Ukraine, Donetsk and Lugansk regions. Trafficking in human beings, domestic violence, sexual assaults, rape, sexual harassment, etc. It gives us and whole international communities more information and evidence about women and children's rights violation. Having the regular contacts with OSCE Special Monitoring Mission in Ukraine, we see necessity to organize and conduct trainings on gender-based violence for its monitors. And we are ready to share our knowledge, experience, and expertise. Also, I would like to call upon OSCE to create special monitoring mission for Crimea, where a lot of violations of human and women's rights have been fixed. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I invite now the representative of Turkey to take the floor. That will be followed by the Institute for Social and Economic Studies. Turkey.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Having aligned with the statement made by the European Union, we would also like to make some comments in our national capacity. Mindful of the fact that women make vital contributions to every conceivable aspect of societal life, Turkey is fully committed to improving the living standards and the rights of women, to ensuring their full and equal participation in all spheres of life, and to further strengthening their status in society. We attach great significance to the work being done in these areas in various international fora, including the OSCE. We believe increased action is necessary, particularly in such areas as preventing violence against women, promoting political awareness, and economic empowerment. Regrettably, violence against women continues to be a formidable obstacle to the realization of gender equality. In keeping with our policy of zero tolerance for violence against women, Turkey actively contributed to the elaboration of the Istanbul Convention and was the first country to sign and to ratify it. Subsequently, our Parliament adopted a new law which defines and tackles domestic violence, transposing the provisions of the Convention into our national legislation. In this connection, we attach utmost importance to the effective implementation of Ministerial Council decision on preventing and combating violence against women, which was adopted last year in Basel. Madam Moderator, the OSCE Action Plan for the Promotion of Gender Equality has proved to be a critical tool for the application of a gender-sensitive perspective to all OSCE activities. We regret, however, that we were unable to adopt the draft addendum to the Action Plan in Basel last year. The addendum will provide us with a valuable update of our toolbox and help enhance the implementation of relevant UN Security Council resolutions in the OSCE area. Turkey is committed to continue working for the draft addendum's adoption this year as well. Welcoming the leading role of the United Nations in the women, peace, and security issue, we would like to re-emphasize that UN Security Council Resolution 2122 encourages regional organizations to implement UNSCR number 1325 and welcomes their efforts. We believe there's certainly room for improvement in this field in the OSCE. The OSCE-wide Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security, co-sponsored by Austria, Finland, Kazakhstan, and Turkey, aims to serve precisely this purpose. We continue to hope that the broad support of participating states will soon translate itself into a decision adopted by all. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all the participants at the joint side event we organized with the delegations of Finland, Austria, Liechtenstein, and Iceland on the implementation of Resolution 1325 during today's lunch break. Before concluding, allow me to underline the importance of the inclusion of women in all phases of the conflict cycle, particularly in mediation processes. We welcome the occasions when gender-responsive mediation was extensively discussed, including at the meetings of the OSCE Group of Friends of Mediation. We hope to see this practice continue. We also welcome the guidance note on enhancing gender-responsive mediation, prepared by the Gender section, which contains valuable insights for mediators and professionals engaged in mediation processes. In sum, none of us can boast of a perfect record when it comes to the promotion of women's rights. We must all make progress in empowering women. In order to do so, we must continue working to equip our organization with strength and tools to more effectively support our national efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I invite now the Institute for Social and Economic Studies, that will be followed by One World Platform, the Institute for Social and Economic Studies.
Добрый день всем.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tatiana Durneva. I am an expert on internally displaced persons at the Institute of Economic and Social Studies of Ukraine, and I would like to talk about the situation of women IDPs in Ukraine as a result of Russian aggression. I must say that I myself am an IDP. Until June of 2014, I lived in Donetsk, but I had to leave my home together with my children, and I have not yet been able to return to my home. In September of 2015, according to the Ukrainian authorities, there are 1.4 million IDPs, more than half of whom are women and children in Ukraine. And of course, women are the first to feel the danger and to protect their children. Men have sent women and children outside the security zone who have remained there in order to work and protect their property, or they have gone to the front. And women have tried to solve all of the family problems. So women have to deal with registering for the authorities that provide social protection, as well as health and educational issues. It requires a tremendous amount of energy and strength. So I would say that women IDPs in Ukraine are women with special requirements, and we need to understand what these needs and requirements are. Women having left the anti-terrorist operation zone have lost all contact with their families, with their parents, sometime with their husbands who have remained in the occupied territory. And so they do not have the possibility to rely on the family network for support. And this, of course, has an effect on their quality of life. Moving to another city, women have often lost, of course, their jobs, and finding a new job in a new place is very complicated, especially for women with children. And the fact is that children in stressful situations very often fall ill, and this makes it very difficult to register them in new schools. And sometimes women are not ready in these situations to send their children away to school for a long period of time, and this has an effect on their ability to find work. Now, so women who have been displaced from the zone of the anti-terrorist operation and from Crimea have special needs for special support now. Now, of course, the vulnerability of these women is increased when they lose members of their family. They require socialization in the new cities and towns in which they are settling. So apart from having lost their homes, their work, and their family support, they have lost the opportunity to vote. There is a law on local elections, but it has unfortunately ignored the plight of internally displaced persons, which is a significant percent of the electorate that should be able to vote in the elections on the 25th of October. So we would like to call for the insurance of electoral rights for IDPs. The role of women in peace building cannot be overstated, but the internally displaced women's situation is a very dramatic one. It's important that the voice of these women be heard, and that in our plan of action in Ukraine, this be taken into account. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I invite now the representative of One World Platform to take the floor. It will be followed by the representative of Slovenia, also on behalf of Austria and Croatia. One World Platform, please.
Thank you very much. I'm happy that I've heard already mentioning the issue of ICT and violence against women. I would like to give a recommendation for the OSCE participating states to include in domestic legislation reference to technology-based violence against women that can be defined as follows. Tech-based violence against women encompasses acts of gender-based violence that are committed, abetted, or aggravated in part or fully by the use of information and communication technology. To create a dedicated agency to receive and investigate complaints, to implement a Commission of the Status of Women number 57 agreed conclusion and its description on tech-related violence. And because it's important to also organize a transformation in this ICT arena, new and developing technology present complexities in policy and legal debates. This raises questions on how to balance protection from violence on the one hand and the fulfillment of the right of a diversity of people on the other hand. There should be global multi-stakeholder processes to form an international framework on internet rights and freedoms that has a strong commitment to women's human rights, equality, and social justice. Women's organizations and activists should proactively participate in internet governance and take on leadership's role to influence the agenda and shape public policy matters in internet governance. I would like to stress once more that when we talk about violence against women, this includes also LGBTIQ and particular attention to women's human rights defenders, bloggers, and activists that are suffering twice the violence of the other. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I invite now the representative of Slovenia, speaking also on behalf of Austria and Croatia. That will be followed by the representative of Switzerland, Slovenia.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Indeed, I have the honor to make this statement on behalf of Austria, Croatia, and my own country, and we align ourselves with the statement made earlier on behalf of the EU. This year, we mark several anniversaries with regard to gender equality and women's rights, including the 20th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Programme of Action and the 15th anniversary of UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. In April 2014, also the OSCE contributed to the review and the global study on the implementation of the Resolution 1325 with a regional conference and consultations in Vilnius. This landmark resolution comprehensively addresses all aspects of women in conflict situations, their participation at all levels in conflict prevention and resolution, protection of women and girls from sexual and gender-based violence, and prevention of violence against women and girls, as well as the integration of a gender perspective into peacekeeping and peace building. It is our belief that all these elements concern also the work of the OSCE in all three dimensions. Women, peace and security issues should not remain limited to the human dimension. The security and economic dimensions concern women to the same extent. In order to find effective solutions to issues of peace and security, we must include women with their views and their ideas, and not only with regard to issues concerning women. Active participation of women in all phases of conflict prevention and resolution and at all levels of decision-making is important in the efforts to achieve sustainable peace and security. Women in the OSCE region should play an equal role as men with regard to peace, security and stability, sustainable democracy and economic development. We also encourage the OSCE to give priority to appointing women in leadership positions. It is also important that we pay full attention to the scourge of sexual and gender-based violence. Armed conflict and other crisis situations put women and girls at a much higher risk of becoming victims of sexual and gender-based violence or trafficking in human beings. The OSCE region is no exception. We are also extremely concerned by the rise of extremist and terrorist violence, particularly targeted against women. These alarming trends underscore the need to promote gender equality and women's empowerment in order to address the root causes of conflict-related sexual violence, transform harmful social norms, and counter the rise of extremism. OSCE participating states have on several occasions confirmed their commitment to gender equality, also to address the issue pertaining to the Women, Peace and Security agenda. The 2004 OSCE Action Plan for the promotion of gender equality was the first step in the direction of making these commitments a reality. However, we consider that additional measures should be taken to comprehensively and effectively address women, peace and security issues in the three dimensions. Austria, Croatia and Slovenia would like to reiterate their support to the development of an OSCE-wide action plan on women, peace and security. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you very much. I invite now the representative of Switzerland to take the floor. It will be followed by the representative from the Czech Republic, Switzerland.
Merci, Madame la Moderatrice.
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Ein paar Bemerkungen machen.
I will speak German. I'll have some comments and I'll make three recommendations. Stability and well-being and security require equal participation of all members of society. This requires the involvement and equal opportunities regarding all processes at public level. The political will at the highest level has to be there, and there has to be a tenacious pursuit of the goal of equality in all areas. Regarding implementation of the OSCE obligations, Switzerland has fully committed before and during its presidency, and therefore we invited in 2013 the Special Representative of the presidency on gender issues and the senior advisor on gender to visit us in Switzerland. We took her recommendations very seriously, and we have reported on the progress on implementation, voluntary implementation, during a special meeting of the Human Dimension sessions in July of this year. After more than 10 years, the time has come for the action plan of the OSCE for the promotion of equality between men and women to be part of the decade goals in Basel. The participating states were entrusted with setting up an action plan and to submit it to the Permanent Council of the OSCE for adoption. The role of women in conflict resolution and in crisis management, or the participation of women in public and private sector life, are themes that should be taken into account in the addendum. And finally, I'd like to talk about the decisions regarding the fight against violence against women. This is a key priority for Switzerland. In Switzerland, we have a new legal base that has been adopted in this area, which defines genital mutilation, forced marriage as a criminal act. Switzerland is in the process of ratifying the Istanbul Convention. We are fortunate this year to be take further forward the OSCE recommendations by adopting current commitments to the present situation. We call on all participating states to contribute positively and also to enable progress for our society. Switzerland has 3 recommendations. First of all, effective implementation of the decision of the Council of Ministers, number 1407, on the stepping up of the fight against violence against women, promoting equality in the 3 dimensions, and thirdly, verification of the implementation of the commitments on promoting gender equality through conferences, review conferences to be held regularly on equality between men and women. Thank you.
May I now invite the representative of the Czech Republic to take the floor. It will be followed by the Gender Center. The Czech Republic.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The Czech Republic aligns itself with the statement delivered by the EU. We would like to share with you some examples of good practices and measures taken by the Czech government to promote equal participation of women and men in all spheres of life. During the last few years, positive progress can be seen in the Czech Republic. In 2014, the position of Minister for Human Rights and Equal Opportunities was renewed within the Czech government, followed by an increased focus on gender equality and personal commitment by the Minister Jiří Dienstbier. Active promotion of gender equality is now one of the priorities of the Czech government, both on the domestic and foreign level, as embedded in the government's policy statement and in the recently adopted Strategy for Human Rights and Democracy Promotion of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In November 2014, the Czech government approved the Strategy for Equality of Women and Men for the years 2014 to 20. It is the first strategic document specifically aimed at gender equality adopted by the Czech government. The strategy covers 8 main strategic areas based on the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, and includes another 5 horizontal priorities such as gender stereotypes, men and gender equality, and cooperation with NGOs and other stakeholders. Each of the strategic areas includes specific indicators in order to monitor and evaluate progress achieved. The strategy also sets up so-called minimal standards for gender equality in state administration. that is, a set of regular tasks to be fulfilled annually. Based on the strategy, an action plan for the prevention of domestic and gender-based violence for the years 2015 till 18 was approved in February 2015. The action plan includes 70 measures divided into 7 strategic areas, including education and interdisciplinary cooperation, support for victims, data collection, or programs for violent persons. In July 2015, the government recommended to all ministries to use the gender impact assessment methodology within the process of preparation of documents submitted to the government. Furthermore, as of 1st of January 2016, all ministries will have to secure gender disaggregation of all statistical data relating to individuals. By the end of 2015, we plan to undertake an awareness-raising campaign funded by the Norway grants, focusing on gender equality and gender-based violence prevention. To sum up, the Czech government has recently undertaken a number of specific and ambitious measures to improve gender equality in our country and to secure effective implementation of gender mainstreaming. However, a number of challenges still remain ahead of us. Women in the Czech Republic earn more than 20% less than men, continue to be underrepresented in politics and decision-making positions, face lack of childcare facilities, and become victims of gender-based violence. The Czech government is aware of these remaining gaps and plans to continue in its efforts to achieve gender equality and empowerment of women. We will also continue to focus on women facing multiple discrimination or disadvantages. Migrant women, women from minorities, or women living outside urban areas deserve to live in a society based on gender equality and participate equally in public life. In conclusion, let me reassure you of the Czech Republic's commitment to fulfill all its international obligations and commitments, including the OSCE Action Plan for the promotion of gender equality. We recommend to the participating states to adopt the proposed addendum to the Action Plan, which would strengthen the existing commitments, and to enhance efforts to achieve gender equality and equal participation of women in their countries. We support the work of ODIHR, the Special Representative and the Senior Advisor on Gender Issues, in promoting the empowerment of women, inter alia by developing a compendium of good practices for advancing women's political participation. And we stand ready to cooperate in these efforts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I now call the representative of the Gender Center to take the floor. That will be followed by the Alliance for Democracy, the representative of the Gender Center.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Я буду говорить по-русски.
I'm going to speak in Russian since there are colleagues together with me who will participate as well. Thank you very much. We should like, first of all, to express our gratitude to the OSCE mission in Moldova, which gave us the possibility to participate with a number of NGO here today. This is very important to us because this conference is a platform not only at which to express oneself, but also to exchange experience and ideas with other colleagues in order to work more effectively in our country. Let me draw your attention to the following items. It is very important today. Everybody has said that we need to move beyond political will of governments in promoting gender equality, but let's look at what's happening both de jure and de facto. We've done a lot in the Republic of Moldova. We have a law on gender equality against domestic violence, against trafficking in human beings. We've said today that there are a number of different structures that are involved in implementing the national gender program, but at the same time, we draw your attention to the fact that it is insufficient just to adopt laws. We must ensure that these laws are actually implemented and applied. Let me say that we have signed a document today which we will send to our government. There are 19 ambassadors represented a number of women among them, and it is calling upon the government of the Republic of Moldova to ensure women's representation at all levels. I would like to draw your attention to this. The OSCE in Moldova has a great mandate in order to ensure dialogue between NGOs and government structures. This mandate should be further strengthened and increased. It's very important as well to support gender equality programs and to pay attention to quotas. I'd like now to give my colleague the floor, who will talk about domestic violence, which affects 1 out of every 4 women in Moldova. There is a network of shelters where these women can find help, but in many cases, when they return home, there is continued violence. In 2013, we opened the very first center for rehabilitation of family aggressors, and it's very important for us to work together with legal bodies. They, in fact, these aggressors are forced to participate in these programs of rehabilitation. What's most important is that they are only allowed to return home if they have been fully rehabilitated. So I would like to call for support for these programs, and I now give the floor to my colleague.
If the person has signed in the list, please make it known to our colleagues in the back, otherwise
Madam
the time is
Moderator, we
almost
mentioned
over.
that we need 3 persons to have intervention.
Your time is
Thank you.
over, so if you can wrap up in 1 minute, then it's okay.
I represent the region of Gagauzia. It's an autonomous region of Moldova. I'd like to say that it is true that these services that my colleagues referred to are highly needed in Moldova. We do have a number of women's civil society organizations that are working in this area. There was an initiative. Of course, it's complicated, but we created an alliance of women's organizations of Moldova, which includes 6 organizations from neighboring regions. And today we are holding negotiations with some Ukrainian organizations as well. There has been a 5-fold increase in the appeals of women to our organizations due to domestic violence. This doesn't mean that the situation has worsened. It just means that women in the south of Moldova have become better informed about their rights and the need for protection. They are starting to believe that their government will protect them. And we are very grateful to the OSCE mission in Moldova for this invitation and for their support for our efforts. It is extremely important and timely for us, and we hope that this will not just be a one-off, but that it will be a long-term cooperation. In conclusion, let me say, may God bless all members of this meeting and all human rights defenders around the world, all women around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I call now for the representative of the Alliance for Democracy to take the floor. It will be followed by the representative of Romania, the Alliance for Democracy.
Thank you. To achieve tangible results in supporting democratic reforms, including gender equality, tolerance, non-discrimination, and domestic violence, the European institutions should implement more tailored and adapted approaches to the partner countries by using more effective tools and leverage when elaborating policies. I also advocate for more tangible support to the civil society if political elites in place fail to provide more democracy. For example, countries of the Eastern Partnership tackle issues with democracy differently based on different realities in place. Ignoring those dynamics means creating more problems rather than fixing the existing ones. Let's take the case of Belarus. Belarus is the only Eastern Partnership country whose membership to the Council of Europe was stopped almost 2 decades ago for known reasons. While using sanctions can work for a country like Iran, then they can be harmful for another. Although there are now fewer cases of detentions of journalists administrative fines, internet becomes more widespread, and political prisoners have been released, the European policies towards Belarus still remain drastic instead of using more flexible tools and less radical approaches. Obviously, there is still a long way to go to tackle a number of shortcomings and challenges in the field of democracy and human rights, but it would be more effective to provide also more venues of cooperation and dialogue, especially with the civil society, rather than pushing the country away, limiting opportunities and creating more isolation. The longer the punishment and isolation last, the more the effectiveness is low and gives local authorities more time to maneuver and to get adapted to sanctions. In case of Azerbaijan, the European Parliament rightly adopted a resolution condemning the persecution of human rights defenders. To some, this can lead to sanctions. However, failing to provide also other options of pressure in the long term, it can radicalize Azerbaijan, render it more repressive, and it can become even more threatening to Armenia's and Nagorno-Karabakh Republic's security and to its own people as well. A differentiated approach was needed for Armenia as well, when Armenia was on the verge to seriously reduce its European integration after Armenia's sudden U-turn towards Russia just before the Vilnius summit in 2013 under certain circumstances. Fortunately, the European institutions got the point and didn't stop cooperating with Armenia, which despite an internal discontent and lack of domestic approval became part of the Eurasian Economic Union. The European institutions should continue the implementation of their policies and pay even more attention to strengthening the civil society in Armenia as a more effective and vibrant alternative to less democracy in place. The use of sticks and carrots shouldn't be limited to sticks only. For some countries, this can lead to facing a dilemma without alternative. So more inclusive policies are needed, and I am also convinced that the more cooperation with countries with less democracy and the implementation of more inclusive policies can be beneficial for all sides. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call on the representative of Romania, that will be followed by the representative of Serbia. Romania.
Madam Moderator, we fully subscribe to the statement delivered on behalf of the EU, but we would like to make just a few remarks in our national capacity. We would like to reaffirm our firm commitments to continue to implement the OSCE commitments in the field of gender equality and empowerment of women. In this context, we would like to point out some accomplishments in achieving gender equality. First one, the adoption of an appropriate legislative framework with a view to ensure gender equality, gender mainstreaming, protection and support for the victims of domestic violence and violence against women. The second, the development of integrated services regarding the prevention and elimination of domestic violence. The third, the adopting and implementation of subsequent national strategies for gender equality during 2006, 2009, 2010, 2012 and 2013-2017. The last one, the creation of appropriate institutional mechanism, including the establishment of the specialized department for this matter in 2014, that addresses both the issue of equal opportunity and domestic violence. We consider gender-based violence and domestic violence as one of the worst forms of violation of human rights and of the rights to dignity and security. We consider this social phenomenon as intolerable and humiliating, having huge and often countless consequences not only for individuals but also at the social and economic level. The National Strategy for Preventing and Combating Domestic Violence for the period 2013-2017 ensures the premises for the reduction of the level of tolerance with respect to the phenomenon of violence, as well as the increase of the effectiveness of the prevention programs through systematic implementation of measures that prevent, control and protect the victim of violence. The main operational objectives of the national strategy are: the first one, preventing and reducing domestic violence; the second one, protecting victims of the domestic violence and punishing the perpetrators by establishing an institutional integrated framework; the third one, promoting cross-sectorial cooperation for the elimination of domestic violence and the support of the partnership with the civil society; and the last one, monitoring the specialized domestic violence cases brought before the competent institution and the concrete responsibilities incumbent upon every institution or authority involved in the preventing and combating domestic violence. In Romania, shelters and safe houses are concentrated in urban areas, and we are addressing now the need for care for victims of violence in rural areas as well. At this moment, Romania provides specialized services of free legal advice and legal representation for women who are victims of violence, thus removing the economic facts as an impediment to prosecution of punishment of this type of violence. We will provide the helpline as well as training for experts in gender equality through an European project named Start a Quality Life in Safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The representative of Serbia has now the floor, followed by a representative from the Council of Europe. Serbia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak about the efforts undertaken by Serbia to support national human rights institutions and national mechanisms for the advancement of women and enhance their capacity to protect and promote women's rights and gender equality. Regarding steps undertaken for promoting participation of women in all aspects of public life, including political, the most visible measure is introduction of quota for political participation of women, which is envisaged in the law of election of members of the parliament. The law stipulates that every third person candidate on the list must be from the less represented sex. Otherwise, an electoral list will be rejected. Thanks to these quotas, there was a significant increase in the number of women among members of parliament from 10.8 in 2000 to 34% in 2015. Despite the achieved number of women in the parliament, there are still inequalities in the parliamentary bodies. There are less women in parliamentary committees dealing with security policies, while there are overrepresented in committees in charge of social policy, education, culture, etc. It's worth noting, however, that an increased number of women MPs resulted in establishment of the Women's Parliamentary Network. This is an informal network consisting of women MPs regardless of their political affiliation. The objective of the network is to rise above political stands and conflicts, to join forces and to promote gender equality and women's issues. Next step would be introduction of quota for participation of women in executive structures, and we expect this to happen in the near future. With regards to the effective measures that have been taken to prevent and combat gender-based violence, the Commissioner for Protection of Equality participated in drafting the law on the police, specifically in the part dealing with the perpetrators of gender-based violence. We are happy to say that our opinion on the draft law was accepted in full, and that the new law will be in alliance with the recommendations given in the Istanbul Convention that Serbia, as well as other 39 EU countries, has signed. There is a number of institutions dealing with the gender equality which proved to be rather efficient and useful. Such a body is the Commissioner for Protection Equality, the body that I am coming from, that is the independent, centralized national institution for combating and preventing discrimination. On the other hand, lack of continuity of some of these bodies, due to often political changes, is a problem affecting the level of achievement of gender equality. Practical example for this was abolishing the Department for Gender Equality within the Ministry of Labour and Social Policy. Although the government subsequently established the Office for Gender Equality, the fact is that the newly established body has less competencies. When it comes to engagement of men in preventing and combating gender-based violence, we are aware that this is a long-term process which requires systematic changes. The most efficient way to achieve these changes would be through educational system, and that is our long-term goal. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me, at the end, to invite you to the breakfast meeting tomorrow morning dedicated to the role of an independent human rights institution in combating violence against women and gender-based violence discrimination in Serbia. This breakfast is organized by the Office of the Ombudsman, Protector of Citizens, Ombudsman of the Autonomous Province of Vojvodina, and our office. I would like this opportunity to thank also the OSCE mission to Serbia for a very good cooperation we have in promoting gender equality in Serbia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I invite now the representative of the Council of Europe to take the floor, followed by Azerbaijan. Council of Europe.
Ms. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, well, the Council of Europe policy in the field of gender equality is an integral part of human rights. From the 1980s onwards, the Council of Europe has put forward European standards for gender equality. Some of the most important achievements in this respect include the drafting to convention, the Council of Europe Convention on Action Against Trafficking in Human Beings, and the Council of Europe Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, called as golden standards by the UN Women. Fighting violence against women is a top priority for the Council of Europe. Violence against women remains one of the most widespread human rights violations. That is why the Convention has the potential to become a powerful instrument in making progress on these pressing human rights issues. Two other legal texts are also very important. The European Convention on Human Rights, with a very rich jurisprudence of the European Court of Human Rights, and the European Social Charter, supplementing the European Convention on Human Rights in the field of economic and social rights. This legal framework with different monitoring procedures helps to achieve gender equality, but is also important to mention other instruments, including recommendation of the Committee of Ministers, which formulates the main standards on gender equality and women's rights. This sound foundation enables the Council of Europe to explore other ways by deepening the reflection on the role gender equality standards and mechanisms, and exploring the possibilities for more effective use of these standards. That is why in 2012, the Council of Europe launched the transversal program on gender equality, aims to ensure the impact of visibility of gender equality standards. A network of national focal points in each member state and the gender equality rapporteurs appointed in the steering committees, monitoring bodies, have facilitated implementation of gender equality standards. In 2014, the Committee of Ministers adopted the Council of Europe Gender Equality Strategy 2014-2017, based on 5 objectives: combating gender stereotypes and sexism, preventing and combating violence against women, guaranteeing equal access of women to justice, achieving balanced participation of women and men in political and public decision-making, finally, achieving gender mainstreaming in all policies and measures. The first report on the implementation of this strategy, presented in 2014, shows there is still opposition to gender equality and women's rights. The report underlines that the implementation of the Council of Europe standard is still a challenge for many member states, but this strategy is extremely important. And the last word, let me make an address about the recent report of the Secretary General on the state of democracy, human rights and rule of law, when the gender issue plays a very important role. And Secretary General formulated very important recommendations addressed to member states, including ratification of the convention, Istanbul Convention, and also take other steps in order to implement gender equality standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I now invite the representative of Azerbaijan, that will be followed by the representative of the Holy See, Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, ladies and gentlemen. Protection of rights of vulnerable groups of the population, including women and children, are among the key priorities of the state policy of Azerbaijan. The state created legal framework as well as effective human rights protection mechanisms with a view to protection of women and child rights. The Republic of Azerbaijan joined almost all essential international documents on protection of human rights. The government of Azerbaijan has made certain achievements in the sphere of gender policy. President of Azerbaijan signed a decree on implementation of the national gender policy in the Republic of Azerbaijan. This act envisages the ensuring of equal representation of women and men in all state structures of the Republic, providing the refugees and internally displaced women with working places to preparing the relevant state program, reviewing the legislations with taking into account the gender aspects. Protection of the women's rights and ensuring gender equality are one of the priority issues of the Ombudsman's activity. The Ombudsman cooperates with the state agents and civil society organizations for ensuring the equal participation of women in all spheres of public and political life, especially in the decision-making process. I would like to note that Azerbaijan Ombudsman pays more attention to gender equality and initiatives aiming to restore the violated rights of women. So it has been launched 16-day campaign activity from 21st November, the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women, to 10th December, International Day of Human Rights, aimed at human rights advocacy and fighting against gender-based violence at national, regional, and international levels. Also, children's rights are an integral part of human rights. These issues require special attention and protection. As a result of social, economic, and legal reforms initiated and implemented within the country in recent years, the protection of human rights, including children's rights, has become an integral part of the state policy. I would like to note that a development concept, Azerbaijan 2020, Look into Future, considers drafting strategy of Azerbaijan family, national action program on gender equality, child code, and national child strategy among these duties. Upon the initiative, Azerbaijan Ombudsman, together with Ministry of Education, hierarchical educational systems, plans on teaching on human rights, including the rights of children at secondary schools, was prepared, approved, and still being applied. I would like to mention that people worldwide hoped 21st century will bring making peace, security, prosperity. But unfortunately, numerous national and man-made disasters, wars and armed conflicts, acts of genocide and ethnic cleansing are still resulted in huge losing of human lives and gross violation of human rights. Women and children suffer first from the lack of shelter, food, access to health, education, and social service. Among 1 million refugees, IDPs in Azerbaijan, each third are children. When 9-year-old boy Fariz was shot in his head by Armenian military sniper and 13-year-old girl Aygun fell victims, the Armenian inhuman and immoral policy and tragically died as a result of exploitation of the toy with the exploit device, with the Armenian side deliberately dropped it into the river flowing the village. Over the 300,000 signatures of school children from Azerbaijan were collected and sent to the UN Secretary General Special Representative for the Children in Armed Conflict. All the children suffering in the war are the resulting of violation of UN conventions on rights of the child, of the Geneva Convention of Protection of War Victims, and other international legal acts. And all of them are fully ignored up to now by Armenian Republic. And unfortunately, the international community still keeps silence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I invite now the representative of the Holy See to take the floor. It will be followed by France.
Madam Moderator, 2 years ago we marked the 25th anniversary of Pope John Paul II's apostolic letter Mulieris Dignitatem on the dignity and vocation of women in the Church and in society, which is a landmark document from papal teaching dedicated exclusively to women. It represents a strong call to all Christians to commit themselves to bringing the proclamation that men and women share equal dignity and responsibility into places where women remain discriminated against, are undervalued, or considered inferior simply because they are women. That apostolic letter was followed by the 1995 World Day of Peace message directed especially to women, stressing that the growing presence of women in social, economic, and political life at the local, national, international levels is a very positive development. Women have a full right to become actively involved in all areas of public life, and this right must be affirmed and guaranteed also where necessary through appropriate legislation. This acknowledgement of the public role of women should not, however, detract from their unique role within the family. Here, their contribution to the welfare and progress of society, even if its importance is not sufficiently appreciated, is truly incalculable. Madam Moderator, my delegation acknowledges with appreciation the progress achieved in the last few decades and the greater presence and participation of women in the social, economic, cultural, and political spheres. Today, women all over the globe, especially in westernized societies, find themselves, historically speaking, in an unprecedented situation. They are highly educated and are engaged in professions outside the home. The role of the Catholic Church in this development merits underlining. From the start, Christianity posits equality between women and men unparalleled within the societies of the time. Indeed, the Church, from the very beginning of its school system, has always placed major emphasis on the education of girls and women, and still today the Church remains the leading educator, including in the developing world. However, even today, women are not infrequently discriminated against in the competition for obtaining jobs or keeping them. Too often, the demands of the workplace prejudice women in combining parenthood with a successful career, compelling them to choose between these in a way men are not similarly forced to do. In the same way that fatherhood and family are not mutually exclusive for men, neither should the choice for motherhood be considered an obstacle to women's self-realization in the workplace, especially when we consider the essential role of the family for the society in educating and suitably rearing its next generation. Therefore, for both women and men, the choice of children and family should be seen as a common responsibility and certainly not as an unwelcome obstacle to productivity in the workplace. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights affirms that motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance, and that the family is a natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection of society and the state. Hence, what is needed is a strong political will followed by policies, measures, and concrete actions to ensure the conditions that will reconcile family and working life. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much. I would like now to invite the representative of France to take the floor. It will be followed by Austria. France.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I endorse the statement of the European Union, and I would like to add some comments from a national standpoint. Gender equality is a priority for France at national and international level. At national level, our country is not spared by de facto inequality between men and women, and therefore France adopted in 2014 the law of 4th of August 2014 on actual gender equality, which deals with inequality wherever it manifests itself in professional, personal and social circumstances. Each year, an interministerial assessment of progress on these measures is implemented. I think it's important, looking beyond laws and measures, to make sure that we have the monitoring, the follow-up mechanisms to ensure that the measures are effectively implemented. At international level, France adopted in July 2013 the Gender and Development Strategy. This strategy enshrines the principle of men and women's equality at the heart of development, and it is a key thrust at international level. Specifically, we encourage players of development policy to implement their measures by taking into account gender issues on a cross-cutting basis. As part of its international advocacy, France bases itself on the series of on international law. These international principles have been recalled on several occasions today. It is based on the Peking International Programme for Action. Implementation of sexual reproduction rights is key for empowerment of women and combating sexual violence. These rights enable women to decide freely on the number of children they will have, on the time interval between the births, to have the required information to make these decisions and to take decisions regarding birth without being exposed to coercion, violence or discrimination. Our recommendations are, we call on the OSCE to continue to promote universal access to women's rights, which is at the very heart of gender equality and the combating of violence against women.
Merci beaucoup. I now invite the representative of Austria to take the floor, followed by the Union of Crisis Centers of Kazakhstan. Austria.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Austria fully aligns herself with the statement made by Finland on behalf of the European Union and the statement made by Slovenia on behalf of Croatia and Austria in this working session. I would therefore like to add just a few remarks from a national perspective. Women's rights and gender equality have been an important focus for Austria for many years. Let me point out that Austria pursues a dual strategy, namely the interplay of gender mainstreaming on the one hand and the promotion of women on the other. We are convinced that working together with civil society partners is of the utmost importance in this regard. Let me provide you with 3 concrete examples to contribute to today's discussions. Gender stereotypes are often an underlying cause and starting point for discrimination against women and girls. They create barriers for the realization of their rights, potentials, and wishes. Austria is therefore tackling gender stereotypes in order to diversify women's and girls' as well as men's and boys' educational and career choices through gender-sensitive vocational orientation, educational guidance, and through strengthening gender theory-based competence of teachers and educators. A comprehensive national action plan on the protection of women against violence was adopted in 2014 as a central concern of the Austrian government. Political coordination of policy measures on the prevention of violence, the protection and support of victims, new means concerning investigation, criminal prosecution and procedural laws, as well as measures for European and international cooperation are and will continue to be part of Austria's implementation efforts. Mentoring and training programs to encourage women to stand for elections on all political levels, as well as awareness raising and trainings in gender competence for university bodies and decision makers will also be continued. Effective implementation of policies and measures promoting women's share in management and board positions in Austrian companies remain a priority of initiatives on local, regional and federal level. Finally, Austria would like to provide 2 recommendations. Austria supports a more systematic approach towards gender issues in the OSCE, including capacity building, benchmarking, monitoring, measuring, and evaluating progress. The current Gender Action Plan, in our view, does not provide sufficient guidance to this end, and the adoption of an addendum updating this framework to current needs and standards therefore has Austria's full support. An effective institutional mechanism for gender equality will also be necessary for a consistent implementation of existing commitments. Lastly, Austria encourages all participating states to ratify and implement the Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, the so-called Istanbul Convention, and to support its independent expert body responsible for monitoring the implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I now invite the representative of the Union of Crisis Centers of Kazakhstan, followed by Iceland.
Distinguished colleagues, I represent the professional network of crisis centers of Kazakhstan. We try to prevent all forms of gender discrimination and of violence and improving relations in society. As my colleagues have said, in Kazakhstan as well, we have adopted a number of laws to protect the interests of women and children, as well as laws to improve the political representation of women. But unfortunately, the influence of women through their participation has yet to achieve the desired results. There is a high level of violence. We are working on improving standards for social assistance to victims. Currently, it is NGOs which provide psychological support to women who have suffered from abuse and to minors who are victims of sexual violence. In Kazakhstan, the OSCE Center has reorganized its programs. Our government needs to formulate quite necessary programs in this area. So she would like to call on the OSCE to appeal to Kazakhstan to work out a national plan to prevent violence and abuse, as well as discrimination, and a plan to ensure equal access to justice, including support for legal assistance, which is very important to victims of violence. My organization calls upon OSCE participating states to strengthen the possibilities for civil society in Kazakhstan to improve the situation of women and children there, and we are ready to provide our expert assistance on these questions. We also call upon the OSCE ODIHR to organize a program on ensuring in the Central Asian region a conference on preventing extremist and religious violence against women and children, and in support of women and children who are victims of such violence. And we'd be happy to be a co-organizer of one of these events. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I now call on the representative of Iceland to take the floor, followed by Armenia. Iceland.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. First of all, allow me to add my voice to those thanking today's speakers, and especially welcoming Ambassador Verveer and Ambassador Behan. Your insights and energy, perseverance and hard work are truly appreciated. As has been said by a number of colleagues earlier in this session, equal rights between men and women are human rights. We are all born equal, and we should all enjoy the same human rights and fundamental freedoms, irrespective of gender, throughout our lives. It is as simple as that. But despite considerable progress in recent years, we are still faced with severe challenges around the globe. Still, women are underrepresented in parliaments and businesses, boardrooms and peace processes. Still, women do not enjoy equal pay or equal access to education. And still, women suffer domestic violence and sexual abuse, which certainly casts a dark shadow over our societies and our lives. And in this respect, I would like to mention also the growing menace of online abuse against women who are systematically harassed online. And despite important legal instruments and strong political commitments, including the Sustainable Development Goals soon to be adopted in New York, we still have work to do. That also includes us here at the OSCE. Gender equality firmly belongs in the realm of our organization as a human rights issue and as a security issue. Both lie at the heart of our organization. In that respect, a renewed understanding of the benefits of gender equality is important, as so many have said before me. Because gender equality is not only good for women, it's good for men and women and for the society at large. Allow me also to add, gender equality is simply good business. My country, Iceland, could here serve as a case in point. While being far from perfect, we have made some progress in recent years, allowing us to rank first in the in 2014 World Economic Forum Gender Gap Index. And one of the main reasons for this is equal political participation. Currently, 49% of members of parliament are women. But that's not the only explanation. Other important variables, they include high level of education among women, universal access to childcare, and parental leave for both parents. This means that women's participation in the labor market is close to 80%, almost on par with men. Arguably, gender equality may not be the only explanation for economic growth and high employment. It can probably be debated what comes first, gender equality or economic performance, or vice versa. But from an economic point of view, gender equality makes perfect sense because it ensures that all people have the same opportunities to seek their fortune and contribute to society. And by the same token, as Madame Verveer put it in her excellent introductory remarks, by the same token, if you exclude women from full participation or somehow limit their contribution, the society misses out on great potential. It misses out on 50%, to be exact, and that's a lot. And this argument is just as valid for politics, if I may, and for peace processes, as we learned from 15 years of UN Security Council Resolution 1325, and we discussed at the lunch break side event mentioned by my Turkish colleague earlier. Finally, if I may overstep my time a little bit, I just wanted to say a few words on the role of men in this regard, and that's quite positive. We've seen in recent years a positive trend towards approaching gender equality as a concern of both of us, both men and women, and not only as a women's issue. And according to this new approach, men should be a part of the solution, and we can do that by raising awareness, being engaged, and engaging others in supporting gender equality. So more and more men are signing up to this, and I encourage you to look up the Men Engaged network that was mentioned earlier, as well as the well-known He for She campaign to learn more. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I now call on the representative of Armenia to take the floor, and that will be followed by the representative of Malta, who is the last speaker in the list for now. Armenia.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would like to thank panelists for the informative and substantive presentations. Since the main focus of this panel was peace, women, and security, I would like to start by presenting two recommendations. First, women residing in conflict areas should be engaged in confidence-building measures. Second, participating states should refrain from punishing women for taking part in confidence-building measures. Unfortunately, confidence-building measures became dangerous activities for women in some OSCE participating states. Leyla Yunus, which was engaged in international peace-building initiatives, had been arrested and tried in Azerbaijan as an Armenian spy. This inhuman treatment of women seeking peace and human rights indicates that Azerbaijan violates not only OSCE commitments, but UN Security Council Resolution 1325. Along with punishing voices of peace and reconciliation, Azerbaijan indiscriminately violates ceasefire by targeting civilian infrastructures, including schools and kindergartens. Armenia agreed with the proposal of international mediator to establish investigative mechanism into ceasefire violation that will stop both ceasefire violations and, what is also important, blame game. However, Azerbaijan rejected this proposal, which clearly indicates that, as in case of violation of human rights in the conflict situation as well, Azerbaijan prefers to be a part of the problem rather than a solution. I thank you.
Thank you very much. And I call on the representative of Malta to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Person. Of course, I join, we subscribe to the statement of the EU and wish to make some comments in our national capacity. The government of Malta is committed to promoting respect for human rights, fighting intolerance, discrimination, and marginalization, as well as to ensure that vulnerable people have improved access to the services and protection that are common entitlements. Tolerance, however, is only a starting point and not an objective in its own right. Eliminating stigma and discrimination is critical towards ensuring that all people are treated with the dignity and respect they deserve, including LGBTI individuals, migrants, people with disabilities, the elderly, and the poor. Furthermore, the government is committed to ensuring women's economic independence and their increased participation in labor markets. At university level, women make up approximately 60% of graduates, and over the years, the outstanding results of women at university level have been steadily increasing, while consolidating past initiatives such as tax credits, subsidized childcare, increased paid maternity leave from 14 to 18 weeks, and family-friendly measures so as to facilitate women's economic independence. The government is committed to provide childcare to all parents free of charge in a bid to enhance female participation in the labor market and in public life. The Maltese government aims to combat discrimination at the workplace, particularly through regular pay, conditions of work, and career opportunities. The public sector is encouraged and supported to develop work practices for better management of flexible work conditions to enable working parents to find a satisfactory work-life balance. The government is further committed to increasing the number of women on boards and commissions established by the government and the judiciary, thereby recognizing women's abilities, skills, and perspectives as valuable resources in society. It is vital to note that 4 out of 6 elected MEPs in the round of European elections of May 2014 were women, indicating that government's proactive approach as well as greater equality awareness among the general public are permitting greater inclusion of women in public life. Malta's official development assistance policy lists gender as one of its focus areas. Over the years, Malta has co-financed a number of gender-related projects through its ODA fund. Moreover, the Ministry for the Family and Social Solidarity and the Ministry for Energy and Health is also actively engaged in empowering women. For instance, on 1st March 2014, the Sexual Assault Response Team was launched in collaboration with Victim Support Malta. The Commission on Domestic Violence is also working on the implementation of a proposal which aims to provide for immediate protection of domestic violence victims and their children through legislative amendments. Lastly, Malta actively participated in the formulation of the Convention on Preventing and Combating Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, the Istanbul Convention, whereby efforts were made to ensure that Malta was one of the first members to ratify it. The convention came into force on 1st November 2014. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have received a last-minute request for the floor, and after the intervention from Penal Reform International, the list is closed, so please take the floor.
Thank you. Dear Chairperson, dear delegates, Penal Reform International welcomes the session discussion on violence against women and would like to highlight the particular link between violence and women in conflict with the law. With more and more research carried out on women prisoners, we see alarming statistics, with many of the 660,000 women in detention globally reporting experiences of sexual and domestic violence before coming in conflict with the law. In the majority of countries, this violence continues while in detention, with custody involving ill treatment, invasive, unnecessary body searches, humiliation, or even rape. It is increasingly recognized that there is a strong link between violence against women and women's incarceration, whether prior to, during, or after incarceration. To quote the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women, who dedicated the report to the issue 2013. The link is particularly evident in cases where women have killed their abuser following systematic and prolonged domestic violence. Our research has found that a significant proportion of those women who committed violence offenses, although very few in absolute terms, were directed against male family members and prompted in the response to abuse they face it and protect their children. Such fears are not unfounded. Globally, 2/3 of the victims of homicide were female. In 2012, and almost half of the female victims, 47%, were killed by their intimate partners or family members, compared to less than 6% of male homicide victims. PRI's research has shown that, on the whole, criminal justice systems ignore the violence experienced by women before they come into conflict with the law. and the circumstances that lead to their offending. The 2010 UN Bangkok Rules on Women Offenders and Prisoners provide in Rule 61 that courts shall have the power to consider mitigating factors in light to the typical backgrounds of women, including their history of violence. Translating this into policy and practice would mean, first, sensitizing the judiciary to the realities of domestic violence. In one case, the judge asked the defendant, "Why didn't you just leave your husband?" Victims are too often trapped in the situation, financially, because of children and out of fear. Second, applying the concept of self-defense in a gender-sensitive way. In most jurisdictions, the concept is applied in a traditional sense, so the attack or threat must be imminent. This usually precludes cases where a woman turns against her abuser, typically not in the moment of violence due to physical inferiority and psychological domination. Third, rethinking sentences and policies. Even when prior abuse is applied as a mitigating circumstance at sentencing, long prison sentences often ensue due to the harsh sentencing guidelines or legislation on life offenses in response to tough on crime policies. While not condoning violent offenses, it has to be noted that the concepts of mitigating factors and self-defense are interpreted by most criminal justice systems in a manner that it is sensitive to the types of threats women face, including violent relationships. As a step towards eliminating violence against women, PRI encouraged all OSCE member states to review their legislation and judicial prosecutorial frameworks in light of the UN Bangkok Rules. I refer you to PRI's research and toolbox on the UN Bangkok Rules, which includes specific tools to assist in an assessment and implementation of gender-sensitive criminal justice system, which can be found on our website, penalreform.org. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. With this, we have come to the end of the speakers list, and I thank all those who have taken the floor and shared their views and comments with us, and for the recommendations that will be compiling the final report. So now, before we move on to the right of reply to be exercised by the delegations, I would like to invite the representative of the Chair in Office, Ambassador Milinkovic, to address a few words.
Thank you very much. Chairmanship maybe on this year's conference is using or misusing microphone too much. But unlike yesterday, I expressed sort of frustration. I must say that after today's debate on gender issue, I believe that chairmanship's delegation might be very, very encouraged. First of all, I would like to thank all delegations who are supporting further progress and work on the addendum to Gender Action Plan. I haven't heard any voice against it, and after today's discussion with many useful recommendations, I'm really confident that we can finish this job this year. I would like to thank you this time, particularly EU countries, today expressing support and through actually explaining their national strategies on gender issues, also directly on or indirectly supporting economic and social empowerment of women, which is a very important part of our addendum. Violence against women, we have a decision adopted last year in Basel. We believe, and you can find it in the latest version of addendum to gender plan that we proposed recently, we don't need to go back again comprehensively on the violence against women, and not to repeat what already exists in Istanbul Convention. We all have to concentrate now to the implementation of the Istanbul and ratification, of course, before that, of the Istanbul Convention. But there is a part of very important aspect of violence against women. It is violence against women in conflict situations. We have one paragraph in the addendum and about rehabilitation of women who suffered this violence. We agree that this paragraph might be better drafted or more developed, but basically idea is to have it this year in the addendum in order to lay the ground for the next chairmanships, as somebody said today, to work more thoroughly on this topic. Review conference was also mentioned by some delegations. That is something that we are very much supporting. We also propose to have it biannually in 2 years. We will see whether we will manage to get consensus on this. OSCE wide action plan on women, peace and security is also one of our priorities, has a prominent place in the among our priorities. We believe that, strongly believe that OSCE as a regional organization acting under Chapter 8 should, and organization dedicated to security should develop this OSCE-wide action plan compatible with our national action plans. Finally, number of delegations in the context of gender mentioned girls and boys. Please carefully listen to girls and boys. During Swiss chairmanships last year and during this year, we had the opportunity, a number of events were organized with the participation of youth and the network of youth ambassadors and youth special representatives. Trust me, they don't want to be a part, just a part of some decision relating to gender or decision relating to trafficking in human beings. They want their own action plan. This action plan will be, to the extent possible, compatible with all other action plans that we have in the OSCE. Children, yes, they deserve our attention, but they also cannot be put in the same basket. It relates definitely to the rights of their parents, be they female or male, but children deserve definitely separate protection, and I would suggest to some future chairmanships to work on this separately. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Austria, who supported actually 3 times gender issue, but also representative of the Holy See for supporting gender equality and also for reminding us of family values. And as you said, yeah, it is compatible and we have it in mind. Nobody wants to endanger in any way family values by bringing addendum on gender issues. With this, I would like to thank you very much, and particularly to thank our special representative, Ambassador Virvir. She will be with us in the following months as well. It goes without saying that we are very, very grateful to Gender Unit and Ambassador Mira Beckham, and we expect her and her team support in our future endeavors. The working group on the addendum will be organized on 27th of October. And before that, we were going to have informal consultations, including here in Warsaw. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Milinkovic, for these final reflections. Thank you for your contribution. And now we have the final part of this session, which is the right of reply that has been requested by 3 delegations: the United States of America, followed by Azerbaijan, and followed by the Russian Federation. I kindly ask you to try to stick to the 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to exercise right of reply in response to the comments of the Russian delegation that we believe refer to a 2013 investigative journalist report on informal online adoptions. The Russian delegation raised this same article at last year's HDIM as well as in the Permanent Council in Vienna. The United States takes very seriously any case where the welfare of a child is threatened. Adopted children in the United States share the same legal protections as the biological children of U.S. citizens. I would reiterate that the United States has laws specifically designed to protect all children from abuse, regardless of nationality. Any criminal act should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and the affected children should be removed from situations involving abuse. We fully support the work of investigative journalists who serve a vital function in our society. Their work highlights the importance of protecting freedom of expression and promoting open dialogue. We care about every single child. We want every child to have a loving home. In the 20 years before Russia regrettably cut off adoptions to the United States, American families had provided loving homes to more than 60,000 Russian orphans. My second and last comment in reply is more to the interventions and tweets over the past 3 days. And the U.S. delegation in response invites all those from Azerbaijan to our open house tomorrow morning at 9:30 here in the hotel to have a direct exchange of views and opinions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now invite the representative of Azerbaijan to exercise the right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. First of all, I would like to exercise the rights of reply regarding what was mentioned by the Armenian delegation. We believe there is no justification to shootings of civilians, especially children and women, and shooting of the participants of wedding parties, which are still in the hospital, by the way. Despite Armenia, I am referring to the real and concrete cases. And as we have time limit, I would like also to exercise the right of reply regarding what was mentioned by the Armenian NGO. I'll just mention that the separatist regime established by Armenia in the occupied territories of Azerbaijan is ultimately nothing other than product of aggression and racial discrimination. It is under Armenia's direction and control and survives by virtue of its military, political, financial and other support. As it was confirmed recently by the European Court of Human Rights in its judgment of 16 June 2015 on the case of Cheragov and others versus Armenia. The court ruled in favor of the applicants, recognizing continuing violations by Armenia of a number of their rights under the Convention for the Protection of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms. Moreover, the judgment effectively put an end to the Armenian persistent denial of its responsibility for the unlawful occupation of and military presence in the territories of Azerbaijan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now invite the Russian Federation to exercise the right of reply, and I have had a request from Armenia that will follow. Russian Federation.
Thank you. We would like to respond to the statement of the Ukrainian delegate, which yet again speaks for itself. We categorically deny the accusation of kidnapping of our subjects. The links between Russia and Crimea are such that Ukrainian children were very often sent to holiday resorts to their families and friends for their summer vacations. Regarding the artillery fire, children were killed during so-called anti-terrorist operations. due to humanitarian considerations as opposed to any other considerations, Russia provides medical assistance to these children, full care for children who suffered from artillery fire, and this Russia helps NGOs in this noble task, and our acts are fully consistent with the international obligations of Russia, including Children's Rights Convention, which has to guide the actions of all states. We call the Ukrainian party to follow the same line of behavior, and regarding the comments of the United States, we would point out the following. The issue of children's rights have been raised in Vienna and Warsaw, and we will continue to raise these issues for as long as these violations continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now invite the representative of Armenia to exercise his right of reply, followed by Ukraine. Armenia.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would like to respond to distinguished Azerbaijani delegation. First, on ceasefire violations. I mean, of course, there is always the temptation to initiate blame game, to say that the other side is guilty for killing, shooting, I don't know, to bring exotic things like wedding and stuff like that. In order to avoid blame game, we should verify ceasefire violations. That's why Armenia agreed to have investigative mechanism into ceasefire violations, in order not just to come and blame each other, but to give international mediators to assess who is responsible for what ceasefire violation. Unfortunately, Azerbaijan does not agree with this, and this is, I think, answers to all questions. Second, Azerbaijani delegation refers to the decision of the European Court of Human Rights. There are good news and bad news in this reference. Good news are that Azerbaijan acknowledges that that Europe has some values and Europe has some human rights. Their president questioned the validity of any European values. In this regard, when I listen that Azerbaijani delegation refers to the decisions of European Court of Human Rights, this is good news for me. But the bad news that it is presented in very distorted manner. Due to the time constraint, I'm not going to go into the details of that decision, but I would like also to remind to Azerbaijani delegation that there was exactly same day another decision, Sargsyan against Azerbaijan, where the court recognized that Azerbaijan perpetrated ethnic cleansing against Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh. I would suggest Azerbaijan first to study own commitments emanating from the decision of the court, and then come here for initiating another blame game. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The delegation of Ukraine.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator. The delegation of Ukraine would like to exercise the right of reply to the statement made by the Russian delegation. The delegation of Ukraine is outraged by the cynical statement and accusation made today by the Russian delegation that allegedly Ukrainian army is killing children in the eastern regions of Ukraine. According to numerous independent international reports, they are convincingly prove that that is Russia-backed terrorists who stand behind the murder of Ukrainian children, the abduction and illegal transfer to Russia. According to the available data, up to more than 1,000 children have lost their parents as a result of Russian aggression. Up to 100 children have been killed and up to 200 wounded in Donbass since the beginning of the Russian aggression. And according to the United Nations Human Rights Monitoring Mission, the actual numbers of fatalities are considered higher. Furthermore, Russia-backed terrorists are reportedly recruiting child soldiers to fight against Ukrainian army. Many such facts have been registered by the OSCE SMM in Ukraine. So against such a tragic background, I would like to take this opportunity to urge time and again the Russian Federation to stop providing weapons, military equipment, financial resources and mercenaries to the illegal armed groups in the eastern Ukraine. The United Nations and other international actors should, as well as the OSCE, should get full access to the conflict zone in order to monitor the situation. This is the only way to prevent further suffering of our children on the territories of Donbass, currently under control of terrorists. To conclude, I would like to reiterate that Crimea is an integral part of Ukraine, and under international law, the Russian Federation annexed Crimea, and as an aggressor state, as an occupied authority in Crimea, Russian Federation bears full responsibility not only for the violations of numerous violations of human rights in Crimea, but also for the respect of the rights of human rights and fundamental freedoms in Crimea. And this also concerns the Ukrainian children who remain still in occupied Crimea. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With this, we come to the end of the interventions and the rights of reply that have been requested. So I would like to, first of all, join Ambassador Milinkovic in thanking our two introducers for joining us here today and for very thoughtful presentations that have inspired further interventions later on. I would also like to thank all of you for having actively participated in these discussions. I would like to also thank the interpreters for helping us through the discussions, and my colleagues, the gender officers of ODIHR, for helping us to put together this very interesting session. And with this, please let me remind you to please leave the headsets and receivers in the room when you leave, and please do join the several side events that are taking place immediately after. And with this, the session is closed. Thank you very much.